No. Okay. Nyakio says she's received it. Nicholas, have you received the start file?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Try see. Try see if it's possible to share it.
Hi, Simon. Hi, everybody. This is Leanne. Please check your emails for the start file. So if in case you have not received, just write down on the chat and then I'll send.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for that. Then I think with that said, we can get started. As we wait for the rest of the team, Lillian and the team who are yet to receive the start file, we'll be going through the presentation just to layer an understanding of what dashboards are. We'll be getting into the Excel in about 20 or so minutes, so you have some time to get the dashboard. The start file. I'm going to start us off with a very easy question. And this question, I'm asking it to Peter. Peter, when you hear dashboards, when was the last time that you interacted with the dashboard, away from maybe even away from Excel, just a typical dashboard in your day-to-day? When was the last time you interacted with the dashboard? And probably not the date, but what dashboard was it? What about it made it a dashboard? And what was your experience with it? What could you pick out from that dashboard? Peter?
Never interacted with it.
Okay, that's fine. Anne, any chance you've interacted with a dashboard before in your life? A dashboard, any form of dashboard?
Yes, including the car dashboard.
Yes, including the car dashboard. The car dashboard is a good example. What did the car dashboard help you to identify? What was the usefulness of that dashboard?
I think it sort of gives, I don't use the word snapshot, but kind of an overview of how the car looks like. I can tell, yeah, basically the functionalities of the car just by taking a look, the key elements I have, yeah. And if something is wrong with the car, that's the first place I look at to just see whether I can isolate some of the issues before even delving further. So I can just, yeah.
Yes, that's very correct. I think the car dashboard is one one of the best examples of a dashboard. It's right there. It doesn't occupy so much space, at least for most cars, and it's able to give you a quick overview of the health of your car, of the situation of your car. For example, when there's a problem with your engine, you'll have the check engine light on. And that just prompts you that, hey, there's an issue here that needs to be addressed. It may not necessarily clearly tell you what that issue is, but it points to a problem that then you can follow through. When you're driving and you're low on fuel, the dashboard is the first place you identify that before your car stalls. And this is just the overall understanding of what a dashboard is, just in its simplest form. That's what a dashboard is. It just allows you to have a very quick overview of situations, like a snapshot. Just gives you very quick outputs that then help you to make more decisions after further confirmation. Even as we get into the presentation, I'd also like to know in the room if anyone has ever interacted with now a model dashboard before. Ruth, by any chance, have you ever interacted with a model dashboard? Or a dashboard in Excel, let me put it that way.
Yes, I have.
Yes. Can you maybe just explain what was on that dashboard? What made that slide, that tab, different from the other tabs?
It's contained like a summary, and also like it was connected to like the other tabs. Maybe you can click somewhere, then you take it to a different sheet. Yeah.
Yes, yes, and I like the aspect that you brought in, that the dashboard is linked to the rest of the model. It does not exist in a vacuum, and it's not a hard code tab. It's not a tab where you where you input where you have your inputs. It's a dashboard where you get outputs. You get to see what are the outcomes of your model. And Ruth, you've mentioned something very interesting there that we'll get to see even as we continue to look at the structure of the dashboard. And that is, it needs to be linked to the model, and it needs to allow a user to move very easily from the output to the components that built up to that specific output. So in terms of our course today, our course outline, the things that we'd like to understand is to just do an introduction of dashboards, which we've already started, and we are very fairly gone with that. Then we look at the structure of a typical dashboard. We look at what to look out for a dashboard. What do you need to think of when you're putting together a dashboard? Then we'll speak on data visualization, because again, as we're saying, a dashboard is a quick output of the results of your model. Just going back to the car analogy, there is a design to how that dashboard is layered. You have the speedometer on the specific sides. There's a reason why that speedometer may be in different styles and forms. It's not a formula, but then you have to continuously calculate and see what speed you're moving at. But it's just a quick chart that then, like for most speedometers, there'll be that gauge that then just shows you how many kilometers or miles per hour you're going at. Then we'll take this a step further and look at what is an interactive dashboard. How can we put together interactive dashboards? Then we look at some sensitivity tables towards the end of the call. So we just, from even the car dashboard scenario, we can use that to define what a dashboard is. And we are saying that a dashboard is a visual representation of the key performance indicators or outputs of a business or model. And the key points or the key lines here is the visual representation and key. So visual representation, this means that it should be easier for you to see. And that's why, as we continue, we'll see that there is need to use tables, graphs, charts, maybe pie charts, just infographics to digest or to easily depict the information that then you're trying to communicate. Then the second key item is, the second key point to note in that statement is it's supposed to show the key performance indicators, not all the performance indicators, not all the outputs. It's meant to focus on the key outputs. Because again, if you are going to put together all the outputs in your model on the dashboard, then you'd have a very large dashboard that is hard to manipulate, has so many moving parts, and is just too complex for a user. And one thing you'll realize, if you've not already, is that as a modeler, the end users of your model are more often than not non-modelers. The management will be using your model to make decisions. The client that you're sending into the financials, very often, more often than not, most of them, they are not very comfortable around models. And so the dashboard allows you to be able to bridge that gap, and they're able to get the output they're looking for easily. And that drives us to our next point, which is it allows for quick review and analysis of the business, where you're able to, just like the car dashboard, you're able to take a glance and notice I'm way beyond the speed limit, and you make a decision to slow down, or you take a quick glance and you realize that you are running out of fuel, and you plan on which is the next gas station that you can stop at. That's the same thing that then the dashboard of the model is also meant to give you, that ability to be able to make those fast decisions out of a very quick data presentation. We've spoken about dashboard, and someone may be asking themselves, so what's the importance of, what's the benefits of having a dashboard? Well, I've put my model has given me outputs in terms of the returns. I know where to get them in the model, then why do I need a dashboard? And one thing that, again, I'm going to repeat is that more often than not, when you're building the model, you're not doing it for yourself. You are building it for another end user who may, number one, not have enough time to go into the details of the model to look for that specific output in the returns tab or the equities tab or the valuation tab where you've put it. And you need to make it easier for them to access this information. Or number two, they just necessarily never have very little experience with models, and they don't know how to move around models. You see, as a builder, sometimes you're more conversant with how your model is flowing. So you can be tempted to think that that's how everyone is going to receive it. But that, more often than not, is not usually the case. So I've highlighted here some 3 key benefits of financial of the dashboards. And number one is it helps quick decision making. It allows you to identify situations and make quick decisions on it. On the first glance of the model of the dashboard, you're able to see what's the return of this project, what's the IRR of this project, what's the cost of doing this project, so what's the valuation of this business, and that can help you make the first decision into evaluating it. Say you're working for a venture capital, and you're looking for impact, and you want to see maybe the number of jobs that a particular business is able to create. And this is there on the dashboard. So by a very quick glance of the dashboard, you're able to identify, oh, they're creating 5,000 jobs in the next 1 year, in the next 2 years. And that allows you to make a decision whether to now get into deeper due diligence, to now look for other items within the model, or to just close it off because the number is too low for your minimum requirements. So the dashboard helps you make those fast decisions without committing too much time. Number two is it helps make informed decisions. And what makes it very useful in making an informed decision is the aspect that then the dashboard carries the key outputs of the model. So you are able to reason with the key outputs of the model to identify that, to make some calls, to make some decisions on the project or the business. Then the last item that I've noted there is that it fosters a culture of continuous improvement. This is very common with budgeting models, where you have your budgeted numbers for the revenues, for the costs, and then you have your actuals on a monthly basis. And so you're able to put together a dashboard that then does that comparison. You do some formatting, and you have color codes for when you are beyond the budget, below the budget, or at the budget. And it allows you to then make improvements, because then you notice that we tend to go beyond the budget around August or around September. So then you are able to, in time, improve your costs, plan your sales, plan how you're going to operate the business, so that then that September, October timeline does not catch you unawares. But before we get into Excel, as I mentioned, we're going to move into Excel at some point. It's important for us to understand what questions we need to ask ourselves before we get into Excel, before we now start putting together the dashboard. And what we're saying is that to be able to build an effective dashboard, any modelers needs to be very clear on the objective of the model. That's number one. Why were you building the model in the first place? Then number two, what are the outputs that then the model has given you so far? Because then out of those two, from a point of understanding those two elements, you are able to be more intentional with your dashboard. You're able to pass a message, to communicate a message through your dashboard. So number one, what's the objective of your model? And I'd like for us to even start working on the MAT case study from this point, even before we go into Excel. So I'm going to ask, let me just pick some. I'm going to ask Ezekiel to just tell us from the MAT case study, what was the objective of building that model? Ezekiel? Ezekiel, I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, hello. Hello?
Yes, hello, we can hear you.
Yes, yes. Sorry, I was a little bit obstructed.
Okay.
Yes, sorry.
No problem. But please, let's follow through this material, because it's going to be it's a lot to take in, and it could be nice for us to just follow through together. Nicholas, maybe you can tell us what's the objective of the MAT case study.
The objective, I think it was, since the company had the company had received an offer from a tobacco company. So the purpose of the purpose of the modeling was to do a valuation to confirm the purchase price that let's say that would be sufficient for the.
Yes, thank you, Nicholas. That's very correct. The objective of the MAT case study was to do a valuation. And Nicholas, you'll forgive me, but let me ask you. You mentioned the output there, but I'd like you to make it clear. What's the final output that then we are supposed to be passing on? What's the final output that then we're meant to give to the final user of the model? Nicholas?
I think the final output would be the value of MAT.
Yes, the value of MAT, which can be termed as the price per share or the total equity value. So those are the first two answers that we need to have. Number one, what's the objective of the model? And our objective in this case was for valuation. Number two, what's the output the key output that we needed to show? And in our case, it's the value, the equity value of the business or the share price. So then once we have those two questions answered, then there is a list of some 6 questions that I've crafted here that I'd also like us to just go through them and piece them together in relation to the MAT case study, even as we now prepare to get into Excel. We've said, number one, the objective is for valuation. Our key output is the value, the equity value, or the price per share. Then the next question we're asking ourselves is, what is the purpose of developing the dashboard? Why do we need to have this dashboard? Because then once you know the purpose of developing the dashboard, it allows you to know what type of dashboard to have. And just to speak briefly around this, sometimes you put together a dashboard that you put together a dashboard for a budgeting model. And the purpose of this dashboard is operational, so that you're able to track how you are in relation to the budgeted amounts all through the year. You're able to make calls on what costs to reduce, what revenues, how you can improve revenues. And so this becomes a key question to then first arriving at what type of a model you need. We have strategic models. Strategic models are the likes that then are going to inform whether to make an investment or not, are the ones that are going to inform you whether a project is viable, whether the cost of that project makes sense, whether you can take on the additional loan, whether you need to reduce your loan. That's the kind of a strategic model that you're looking at. An analytical model is where you want to understand the drivers of every single item. And again, this can also be used even in operations, where you need to know what's the volume that you need for you to attain a certain level of profit? What's the volume that you need to sell or to turn over for you to be able to meet your cost, for you to be able to meet your investors' returns? What is the rate at which you're growing? What's the rate at which your customers, you're getting new customers? Here is where now you bring the stories on impact. How many jobs are you creating? If it's then we bring in the equality conversation. What's the ratio of what's the gender ratio in the workplace, in the office, in the customers or the end users of your product, of the business or the project that you're trying to look at? That's where analytical plays in. We'll go through all the questions, then we'll now come back slowly and answer them in regards to MAT. The second question is, what are the key outputs needed for decision making? Once you've understood what the objective is, what the outputs are, you know what kind of dashboard you're going to make, then the next question is just to identify what are you going to have on that dashboard? What are you going to have where? What do you need to communicate? What do you need to tell the user? Just put that information together. And then even as you think about the outputs, another very key question, again, is who is the end user of the model? Because, again, you're putting the dashboard to communicate to someone. And it's very important for you to understand who you are speaking to. What is their level of financial understanding? You can use a term such as ROA or ROE, return on equity. And this person does not know what ROE is. Do you need to be more elaborate on some of these short forms? Do you need to explain what EBITDA is? Do you need to label that in full? Do you need to add notes on the dashboard just to explain that EBITDA is the earnings before we get to the tax, the depreciation, amortization, and interest? Do you need to add pointers to that? Or are they conversant with financial numbers and it's okay if you use EBITDA? It's okay if you call gross profit GP. Those are some of the things that then the end user is able to inform about your dashboard. Number 4, now that you know who the end user is and you know what output you're communicating, the next question is, how best do I represent what I want to tell in a very easy to understand manner? Is a graph the best item or tool to use to communicate this? Do I need a line graph or a bar chart? Do I need a pie chart? Will a pie chart communicate what I want to show? Here you get to think about things like, I want to show trend analysis. Will a pie chart be able to help me answer what the trend is? Such kind of questions is now the questions you ask yourself on which is the best way to represent that specific data. Then number 5, we have what level of summary is acceptable. Say the business has 5 different revenue lines. They're selling 5 different products, or there are 5 specific business lines, and then they have a total revenue. If you just show the total revenue, is that sufficient? Or do you need to go a bit granular and show what each business line is generating, what the costs are in respect to each business line? What level of summary is acceptable for the end user, and even in respect of what you're trying to communicate? Then the last question that then you need to ask yourself is, how do you prepare the dashboard in a way that it's easy to update? And this is where I believe it's Ruth that said that then the dashboard is linked to the rest of the model. That's what you now need to figure out. How do I link my dashboard to the rest of the model? So that then every time I change an input, I don't have to come to the dashboard and also change what is on the dashboard. That just a slight change in the model is reflected on the dashboard. The dashboard is more intuitive, it's more interactive. What other things do you need to input on the dashboard to allow the user to be able to make some analysis, to be able to look at some analytics on the dashboard? Then with that said, now I want us to look at all these questions in light of the MAT case study. And the first question is, what is the purpose of developing the dashboard? And I want Anne to help us on this. What do you think will be the purpose of our dashboard for the MAT case study? Do you think it's operational, analytical, or more strategic to make an investment decision? Anne?
Must it be either of those, or it can be all?
It can be a couple of them.
I sort of feel it's mostly Sorry, what options did you give? Analytical, decision, and operational?
So that operational, strategic, and analytical. These are the ones that you are currently looking at. Maybe there could be purposes beyond this, but for our case, let's look at these three.
I think I would pick, let me see. I think I would pick strategic.
Okay, why will you pick strategic? Okay, I can help with that. Yes, okay, let me help you. Yes, you're correct. The MAT dashboard is more strategic because we are trying to use the dashboard to make a strategic decision of whether to receive a particular offer or whether to invest in this business or not. So we need to build or structure the dashboard in a way that it allows the user to quickly have a glance and be able to pick out some of the things that will affect their strategic decision. For example, what's the gearing level of the business? How are the revenues performing in respect to the net profit? You need to show what's the just a snapshot of the financial statements, just some quick numbers, just to be able to make a strategic decision. Number two, and I'd like sorry, I'm just going through the list of who's here. I'd like Lillian to help us on this. What are the key outputs that we need to show in our model? Just give me two key outputs that then we need to show on the MAT dashboard. Lillian? Okay. Yes, Lillian?
I'm really kindly asked, but it's someone else. And I'm trying to catch up with everything. Yeah. But
No problem.
Is revenue fine?
Revenue is one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Revenue. And there are others. Thank you so much, Lillian. And I think because of time, I'll answer the others for us. But then just this, I hope you've gotten the idea of how we are able to respond to these questions to understand what type of a model will be, what type of a dashboard we'll be putting together. So in terms of output, we need to see what the revenues are. We need to see what's the value of the business. We also need to see what's the gearing level of the business. Those are the kind of outputs that then we are trying to communicate. Profitability is another one. How profitable is the business? We also need to have that. Who is the end user of the model? The end user of the model is the management of MAT, the business itself. Investors will be looking to put in money. How do we best represent the data? And this we'll be able to, we'll see it better when we are in the model and we are seeing how that moves around. We'll be able to see it better from that point. So we'll answer that question on a chart by chart basis. Then the next point, what level of summary is acceptable? We don't need to go so deep, but we still don't have to be so shallow. So we have to find a balance between how deep do we go or how shallow do we remain. Then the last question is, how do we prepare the dashboard in a way that it's easy to update? And the answer to this is, we need to ensure that then we are linking, that the dashboard has outputs that you're able to follow through. When, for example, let's say the price is at 400 Kenya shillings. If you click on that, if you double click or control shift jump on the 400, it will take you to where that calculation is so that you're able to trace and see how we arrived at that 400 number. Very quickly, as we go on, the typical structure of a dashboard, maybe just a few points to mention, is that it needs to tell a story. The story needs to flow because you're passing a message. So you need to make sure that your information flows from the top going down, and that there's a flow of information from the top going down and from the left going right. Just exactly how someone would be reading a book. once they open the dashboard, that you start with the very key items at the top, then you explain or you just guide them down to the very bottom. And that information is also flowing from left to right. The other thing is segment the outputs, the parts of your dashboard into different segments based on the information presented. You have a section on revenues. On that section in revenues, you show the growth, you show the trend, you show the growth rates, and you also show the composition maybe. Under that section, you go to profitability. You show the EBITDA, the EBITDA, the EBITDA margin, gross profit margin. You also show some clearing. Maybe you can call that section operational, where you're just able to show what are these highlights that show how operational we are. You have a section on financial statements. Again, these are pro forma financial statements, a reduced or summarized version of your financial statements from your financial statements tab. And whatnot. Then there we have a list of some of the key sections of our dashboard. Again, we'll share this presentation, so you'll be able to go through it at your own time. Then now we go to data visualization. Because again, we are trying to communicate our output in the easiest way possible. So we try to use as many data visualization tools as possible. This is where we go into the likes of the graphs, the charts, the images. And these tools, what they do is they provide an easier way to understand some of the message that you're trying to communicate. You're trying to show a trend. You're trying to identify places that are outliers. You're trying to show a pattern. You're trying to show composition. How do we arrive at the total revenues? We have 3 business lines. Each business line is contributing this much, and this much, so that then we arrive at the total, at the 100%. Then something else to remember is that when you're coming up with these charts and graphs, always focus, put more emphasis on the message that you're trying to pass, and let everything that is on that chart be targeted to contributing to that message. Because everything that is not helping you pass the message is a distraction. For example, you're trying to show revenues and you have different bars and each bar is a different color. That immediately tells a user that these are different items, but maybe you just decided to be creative with colors. You wanted to beautify your dashboard and make it appealing. But in that process, you ended you confuse, or you crowd the user with too much information, and a lot of it is distractions, and they end up missing the main point. I have a snapshot here of different types of charts, and as you can see, there are quite a lot. There are quite a number. And what this chart has done is it's tried to narrow down to what each chart tries to communicate, from the ones that do comparison at the top, relationships to the left, distribution to the right, and composition at the bottom. And then it shows you how then do you just continue to make that decision. And as I mentioned, the presentation will be shared, so you'll be able to spend some time and look at this. But even as we continue, one thing I'd like to say is, in this session, we may not have the opportunity of going through all the charts, but we'll do our best to go through as many as we can. But follow on after this call, spend some time, build different types of graphs and charts, try to see how they are built, what do they communicate, how do they look, so that you can just build, so that you're able to build an understanding of which charts do you need when you're trying to communicate a particular, when you're trying to pass a particular message. Then with that said, I want us to get into example. So at this point, I'd like us all to open our MAT, the start file. Let me just get my start file as well. There you go. Okay, I'm giving us a few minutes to to also get our start files ready. Okay. Just need 2 confirmations from the room, maybe from Anne and from Nicholas, that you have your start files ready and opened on your side. Nice.
I do.
Yeah.
Thank you. So what we are going to do is we are going to try and put together a dashboard. We are going to put together a dashboard together. So we are going to put together a dashboard at the same time. And we'll start from building the charts to then populating our dashboards and trying to arrange the information on our dashboard. And with that said, let me share more of my screen so that I can move between. Yeah. Okay, because something else that I want us to do even before we start drawing out the charts is I want us to do a brief architecture of what we want our dashboard to look like. For the purposes of the call, I'll use Paint, the Paint application to just sketch out what our dashboard would look like. So we'll assume that this is our dashboard page. We mentioned that our key output is the valuation. So the first segment, I'll just draw a line here. Sorry. Just choose color. Okay. Then I'll just, is it doing that? Okay, there. So I'll just draw a line here for the top part of our dashboard. And this part, we can say this is where we'll have our valuation. We'll mark that with a V. So this is the section where we'll have our valuation information. We'll probably have a table here just to show what those valuation inputs are. We can have a sensitivity chart, just a brief sensitivity chart here. And we'll speak more on sensitivity once we get there. Then the next output that we spoke of is revenues, and we're going to mark this by an R. And this will be our second section up to there. And we could do 3 graphs. The first graph will be a graph to just show the trend. And on this graph here, we could use a bar graph maybe, so that we have bar graphs just to show how that revenue, and forgive my crooked lines. As you can tell, I'm more of a modeler than a painter. So you'll kindly just bear with me today. So for the first bit, we'll use maybe bar graphs to just show what's the trend of the revenue of a period of time. Then maybe something else that a user would also like to know or to see is what's the composition of this revenue. So here we can use stacked bar graphs where we still have that trend. We're able to identify that trend, and I'll try to just mirror what we have on that other row. But since on the MAT case study, we have 2 revenue lines. We have the local sales and the export sales. We are able to show by breaking this bar into 2 bits, we're able to show that this section, this shaded, sorry. This shaded section is for the export, the unshaded is for local. So then we have the exports there, and the other one is for local as well. Then also, and so with that we're able to see what's the composition of each business to the total revenues. And maybe something else that we'd also like to see in terms of revenues is the growth rate. So here we will probably use line graphs just to show how that revenue is growing. And we could also decide to show that how the revenue is growing vis-a-vis how the net profit is also growing. Maybe the net profit is a bit slower. Okay. at least now, once you have this down on a piece of paper or you have it done somewhere, it begins to take the form. Now it becomes easier for you to see what you need on your dashboard. Then maybe the next part is on profitability. We'll label this P. P for profitability. And this is our section here. And here maybe, or let's call it operations rather than profitability. Let's call it performance. Okay, I should have just left the P. Let's call it performance. Because here's where we want to see how the business is performing. So here we'll have, here we'll target to have, again, another graph. But now this graph, we want to compare several outputs over the same period. So maybe just to take you back, if you look at our revenue, the trend graph for our revenue, we are comparing only the revenues per period. We are seeing, say this is 2023, 2024, 2025. We're only seeing what's the revenue for 2023, what's the revenue for 2024, what's the revenue for 2025. But then what we want to do at the bottom here is have more than one output in a particular period. So say this is 20, so let's say this is year 1. We have a graph on the gross profit. We have a bar on the gross profit. Then right beside the bar on the gross profit, we have another bar on EBITDA, gross profit margin. Then we have another bar on EBITDA margin. Then another smaller one on the net margin. Then on year 2, so let's just say this is year 2. Let me use Roman number. That's easier to think. We want to show the same thing. We want to show what's the gross profit, what's the EBITDA, what's the gross profit margin, what's the EBITDA margin, and what's the net margin. Then again, year 3 as well. We want to show the same 3 items. We want to show what's the gross profit for this year as well. We want to compare this against the EBITDA margin, and we want to also compare it against the net margin. So it is in a particular time, and the difference between these two graphs, the one on revenue is that you're only looking at the revenue on per period, but here you're able to compare in 2023, what was our gross profit margin, what was our EBITDA margin, and what was our net margin. Then when we move to the next year, how did those improve? How did they compare to each other? And so on. Then maybe here we can have another line graph just to show maybe what's the gearing ratio of the business. Maybe that's how it looks like, or let's assume it's sloping down because they are paying the debt, so, and so on. And maybe here we'll figure out, here we will work together to figure out what goes here once we get into Excel. Then the next part is we can have the financial statements here. I'll just label this as FS. The financial statements there. Here we can just do tables with the income statement, balance sheet, very pro forma, very summarized. Then we can have now the sensitivities as the last bit. Have sensitivity for, because our main output is the value of the business. So we are sensitizing the value of the business against maybe the multiple for one. Then also we also sensitize what's the value of the business. Then we're also sensitizing, doing a sensitivity analysis of the value of the business against the cost of capital. And then we can also have another sensitivity graph here that has both the cost of capital on the rows and the multiples on the columns. Then with that, it gives you an overview of what you need for your dashboard. This makes it easier for you to get into Excel and start working on those graphs. So then very quickly, we're going to jump onto Excel. And how I'd like us to do this is I'll guide us on how to do it. You can do it with me, but every so often I'll be taking a few minutes to just give you time to catch up so that we can continue. As I say this, I realized we are headed towards the end of the first hour. So again, speed is really encouraged so that we're able to finish in time to even receive any questions that could be in the room. So from our paint here, our mock dashboard, we have identified that then let's start with the graphs bit. We'll come to put together the dashboard later on, but let's first build the graphs. The first graphs are on revenue. And the first one, we want just to see what's the trend. So we want to do a bar graph on the total revenues. So this is where you come to our dashboard, come to insert. At the top there, we have the insert button, just click onto that. Then we have a section here that is labeled charts. Here you will see we have very many chart options. We have the bar graphs, we have the line curves, we have the pie charts. We have, I think they're calling them hierarchy charts. We have other statistical charts. We have, I think these are called scatter graphs. We have the waterfalls. And then this, I think, are combo charts. Combo charts is where you're able to put more than one chart type together. And we'll also try and work out a combo chart just to see how that happens. So let's start with bar charts to start with. Sorry, I don't know who deleted that data. Let's start with a bar chart. And we are going to go with this first option that's here. Yeah, they're insisting we use this. Oh, I have something that is highlighted. My bad. Let me click on an empty cell, then we can insert from there. Sorry. We can insert from there, go with the bar chart, take the first one. Let's remove everything. Okay, so now we are starting with a clean chart, just to show you that the chart is clean there. It's completely blank. So you right click on it. There is button on select data, select data. Just click on that. Then this box will pop up. So this is the box that we populate with the information that we need. So we click add. Then we have to label our graph. So we call it total revenues. You can just, again, this is where we are saying, make the outputs easier to use, so that in the event that you want to change how you have labeled your total revenues, when you change it in the model, on the dashboard also, the output changes immediately. So we are linking the name to a particular point in the dashboard. Then we come and we pick the numbers. And we start from 2017, and we need to go all the way. We need to go all the way to the end of the forecast period, which is 2027. And we click OK, and there we go. If you can look at our graph, it has some bars, some bar graphs that then are moving. But when you look at the horizontal axis, the labels are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 11. So we need to give that a timeline. And our timeline needs to be annual. If we were going to go with the annual date, that is 31st December 2023, that's just too much information. And it seems to say that those revenues are in respect to 31st December 2023. But in actual sense, the revenues are for the entire year. So to fill in the timeline, you come to this second section and you click on edit. And on this prompt, you are able to fill which row will be your timeline. And here we pick from all the way to 2027. And we are picking because we want the years, 2021. We don't want to get the month and the date. We just want the year. And so we click OK on that. We click OK here. And we click OK there. And there we have it. We have our first graph. There's someone who's unmuted. I don't know whether you have a question. Peter?
Yes, yes. There's nothing I'm seeing on my screen. He's just talking and there's nothing changing at all. So I could hear you are talking, but there's nothing. There's no presentation of what is going on.
Is everyone experiencing the same thing? Nicholas? Can you
So
able to see
now,
things change?
Simon, now we can see your teams,
Oh, sorry.
but I can see from my end. I don't know about the rest.
Peter, can you see my Excel now?
It's seeing something like a low bandwidth, so I think it's either my network or something. I don't know what's
Maybe
going on.
I could try stop my video, just save on some bandwidth. Maybe that will help in terms of the speeds. Anyone else facing the same problem? Okay, take the silence to mean that we are good. Peter, you're with us now?
Yeah, as you can see now
Can you see a graph on the screen?
yeah, I can see, yeah, I've seen a graph, total revenue. Yeah.
Now we are together. So again, so now we have a graph, and then we need to improve what's on this graph. We need to show more of, we need to optimize our graph so that it shows what is, it shows the important stuff. And the first step to optimizing is that we can decide to have our vertical axis in millions, because we are not having any numbers past the million mark. So then what we can do is have the horizontal graph in millions, so that then we are able to reduce the space it occupies and have more space for the bar graphs. Or even better, so that's number one. Let's try it out first. We could have this in millions. So you just right click on the, let's do that again together. Just right click on the axis. Then this pop-up box will come up. Click on format axis. Then just scroll down under axis options. Just scroll down to where we have the display units, and you can decide to have this in millions. So once you do that, Excel is able to automatically have this in the display in millions, and also include a millions marker here. Alternatively, something else that we can do, we can decide to have the data labels on top of each graph. So here we come to the chart design. Just click on the chart design, and the add chart elements. Just click on that drop down. You will see data labels. So just move to the right on that. Then we pick the one on the outside, so that then now we are seeing what the specific revenues are on top of each bar. Since now we have this, we don't need the horizontal axis, because we now know that this graph is representing 10 million. We know this is representing 11 and this 14. We don't need the 15 mark, because we know where 14, we can tell that this is 14 because of the number at the top. We can delete that. And there we have a more cleaner, neater, easier to read graph that does not have a lot of unnecessary items. The other thing that we can remove are these grid lines. So just click on one. A bit elusive. Okay, we'll try come and clean it up later as we continue. So there we have the bar graphs on the total revenues. Okay, then if you remember from our paint, we had another graph of we had another graph on the revenue side, which was the graph to show the composition of the revenues. Because as you can see from our model, even here from Finstat, we have two revenue lines. We have the local sales and exports. And we want to show this 14 million, how much of it is local sales, how much of it is exports. And so what we do, we're just going to park this graph here. We'll come back for it. And I want us to start another graph somewhere at the bottom here. what we'll do for this example is we'll start by first highlighting the data, the first set of data, which is the local sales. So we just highlight that from the first period in 2017 all through to 2027. Then we click on insert. Then we click down on the bar graphs, because the graph you're looking for is a type of a bar graph. It's a stacked bar graph. So we click down on the bar graph, and we want it to look like this. This is how we want it to look like. So it's this is what we had previously, but this is what we want it to look like. We want to be able to layer additional data on top of that item. So we are going to click on that. Then again, as we did the other time, right click, come to select data. Okay, before we do that, let me move this chart to somewhere up there. Yeah, I think that's better. So we click select data, we right click, we go to select data, move this to the top here. And so we have this series one. Series one is what we have down there, and we want to edit it. We want to edit, again, as I mentioned, we want that the series names comes directly from the model. So we highlight on local sales, because that's what is highlighted there. We click OK. Again, our timeline, let's pick also the year as well here, all the way to 2027. Okay. And since it's a stacked bar graph, we are going to need two entries for data entries. The first one is what we have on the local sales, and we need to add another one for exports. So we are going to click on the add button. We are going to name that second item as exports, and then we are going to pick the data up from 2027 through to from 2017 through to 2027. Then we're going to click OK. Then we're going to click OK as well there. Then now, and there we have our graph. As you can see, it is stacked. The lower blue part is the local sales. Then the maroon bit is the exports. And you are able to see what's the split. But then we want to be able to see this split better. So what do? We come to this, highlight the local sales series, and come to add charter elements and chart design. Click on that down arrow, come to data labels, and we want this to be on the inside base. Okay. But before we do that, maybe just before we do that, because as you've seen, once we, okay, let's do it first so that we're able to identify what the problem is. If we have that under the inside base, as you can see, those numbers are too big. We have some 16 million and something. It's a very long number. It's a very huge data. That does not fit per bar. And so that makes it a bit hard to read, because now they're overlapping each other. And it breaks the whole point of being easy to read and being able to pick out data in one snapshot. So what we do, I'm going to Control Z, and we are going to start by converting our axis to millions, like we did before. We are going to come to display units, and then we are going to click this to millions. So that now, once we highlight the local sales and come to data labels and then place on the inside base, you see then that now the numbers are smaller and they're able to fit into the bars. We do the same with the top. That is for exports, data labels, and this we want it to be on the top side, the inside end at the top. Now, since we have the data, we don't need the horizontal axis, but then we still have a problem. Our bars are too narrow, and the labels are in black, the same, so it's not very easy to read. So the first step we do is let's change the color of our font color. Let's make this white. White will shout out of the blue. Let's also make this white as well. So then now it's easier to read. Now you're able to see that in 2023, we had a total of 23 million sales. Of the 23, 12 million was from local sales and 11 million was from exports. It becomes easier for you to understand what happened in terms of revenues for 2023. Number two, I said that these bars are a bit narrow. So we can click on one of the series, click on the local sales, then come and click on format data series. You'll see what we are calling the gap width. The gap width is this space between two bars. And what we want to do is we want to reduce it to 100. Let's reduce it to, we want to reduce it to 100. And if you've noticed, our bars have become a bit bigger. We can even do 95. Let's see how it looks at 95. Yeah, let's do it at 95. And now what you notice is our bars have expanded, like the width of our bars has grown because we've reduced the gap between each bars. Then here we can remove the grid lines. And now we have two sets of data. Anyone looking at this for the first time, since they were not with us, we were putting it together, they're not able to tell which is the export sales, which is exports and which is local. So we need to add a legend or a key at the bottom here. So we come to chart design, add chart layout. We come down to the legend, and I want us to choose a legend at the bottom. Okay, then just click on that. So Excel automatically fits in a legend that shows that the blue represents local sales and the maroon is for exports. Something else that we need to do is we need to give our chart a title. And we want our title to come at the top above the chart. And we can call this revenue composition. Then remember, it's in millions. So we need to show this is in millions, like that. There you go. Okay, so now we've done a bar graph and we've done a stacked bar graph. The next graph that I'd like us to do is a line graph. I'd like us to show a line graph. And for the line graph, I want us to look at the net profit. Just give me 1 second. Okay, so here on ratios, I want us to do some quick calculation on growth rates. I want us to do quick calculation on growth rates because that's what I want us to use on our bar graphs. And I want us to have growth rates on revenues and on net profit. So the first thing to do is to come to the FinStat, get the total revenues. Get the total revenues, bring them here to ratios. Copy that across. Then we have revenue growth rate. The units are in percent. And then using the formula, if, you're saying if, and this is if and, this, let's start with the previous one. The previous one, if it is greater than 0, and the current one is also greater than 0, we want Excel to take the closing balance or the revenues in the current period minus the revenues in the previous period, no, not minus, over divided by the revenues in the previous period, then we want to less 1 just to get the growth rate. But in case either of them is not greater than 0, we want Excel to give us a 0. Then make that into percentage. There we have our total revenue growth rate. Then we're just going to copy that same formula, paste it down there. Then we're going to change this to the total net profits after tax. Then we're going to call this net profit growth rate. Net profit growth rate. There we go. So then now we want to do a line graph. So the first step, come to insert, choose this line graph. We can go with the first one. And there we have a blank. We have a blank chart that then we need to populate. Again, the same approach. We right click on it. We go to select data. We add. The first one is the revenue growth rate. Then we pick the data from December, from 2017 all through to 2027. Click OK on that. Then we also need to have a timeline. Let's pick the one on column on row 4. There we go. Then we want to add another, okay, sorry, let's click OK first. We want to also show how the net profit is growing so that that can be compared with the revenue. So we want to add another line. This one we're going to call it the net profit growth rate. And we're going to pick from here, 2017, all the way to the end. Okay. So if you can notice from this graph, we have some negatives. We have numbers that are going below the 0 mark. So first things first is let's have this. Let's reduce the decimal places in that. To reduce the decimal places on the axis, just go down to number. Then right here in the format code, just delete the zeros before after the decimal point, and also the decimal point itself, so that you're only left with one number, like so. Then I want us to label this, have these data labels to your, let's have this to your right. No, let's have these above. Yes, let's have those above. Then for the blue one, let's have them below. Below. I know they can be a bit confusing. Let's also format these labels so that they're in. We remove all the decimal places the same way we do numbers. Okay, so what we can do, let's just copy the formatting for this on the number. We'll just copy that formatting, Control-C. Then we want to paste it onto these labels. With the general, Control-V, then add that. Okay, then we do the same for this other set of data. Delete the general, Control-V. Okay. Then we are still trying to optimize our graph. So we delete the horizontal axis. Maybe before we delete the horizontal axis, we can see that the lowest negative is a -8. What we have here. Let me try bring it down so that we see it more clearly. That item. So the lowest we have is a -8%. Oh, sorry, it's a -15. This 8 is for the other one, it's for the blue line. So it's a -15%. However, our lowest point is -40. So I want us to change this so that our lowest point is -20 And our highest point, let's have it at 120, because our highest point in our data is 119%. Let's have it at 120 there. Okay. Then the other thing I want us to do is I want us to get this data that is overlapping, and I just want us to set it apart so that it's clearer to see. And how you do it is you just highlight the data set, left click, then drag to the side, so that then it's easier to pick out what those numbers are. The other thing that we can do, and let's even start with that, is to mark the data set, the blue line, then change the color, the font color to the same blue. We can get a brighter blue, and then maybe bold it, so that then we know that the blue data is for the blue line, and then the one in black remains for the maroon line. So that way, it's easier to trace which data is in respect to which line and which item and which point. Okay. So now, with that said, we'll clean it up once we are moving to the dashboard. I think that we are almost done with we are almost spending 1.5 hours of the session, and we still have not gotten into putting the dashboard together. I want to speak on 2 more graphs. Then most of the other graphs, then I'll allow you to work on that, and feel free to share your versions once you're done for the MAT case study, and even for your own chosen case studies. Feel free to put together a dashboard and share that with me, and I'll be able to review and give back feedback. So the 2 other dashboards that I want us to look at, I want us to look at a combo dashboard, where we are doing more than one chart type. And I also want us to look at a waterfall chart. So just starting with the combo, and the combo will use what we already have. So we already have a bar graph for the total revenues, what you see on your screen currently. Let me just center it there. And what we want to do is we want to add a line here, and this line we want it to show the net profit, so that then we are able to compare out of the revenue that the business generates, how much of it is retained, or how much net profit does this business make out of that. So the first step to this is right click on the chart, click on select data, and what we are doing is we are adding another set of data. And what we are adding is the total net profit after tax. Then we want to pick the data from 2017 as usual, all the way to 2027. There you go. And currently, the model has taken it as a bar graph, because this is, at this point, this is purely a bar graph. But what we want to do is we want to right click, we want to come to change chart type, and at the bottom here, we have a combo. We want to click on that combo. Once you click on the combo, Excel allows you to choose which combination of graphs you want to do. So for our case, we want to do the bar graph, and we want to combine it with the line graph. Okay. So once that is selected, we're able to see how that line cuts across the bar graphs, and it also has the amounts for the total net profit after tax. Now, again, we have 2 data sets. We need to create a title chart. So we come to chart design, that chart element, chart title at the above the chart. And I want us to call this revenue to net profit. And again, let's remember that our numbers are in millions. Our numbers are in millions. Okay, there we go. So that's the first chart that I want us to look at. The other chart that I'd like us to do is the waterfall. And what the waterfall is useful to, it helps to show composition, or it helps to show how you build up to a specific number. And for this one, I want us to use the debt repayment. The debt repayment as the data for our waterfall. Yes, the debt repayment is not the best data to represent this, but for the purposes of this call, we'll use that, the proceeds from borrowing or repayments, and we are going to highlight that for the forecast period alone, the period when we are servicing the debt in the forecast period. So from 2023 to 2027. And with that, we want to insert a waterfall. And this is the waterfall chart. Just click onto that, then click on this first. There you go. And so again, we have the repayments. So we don't need the axis. We need to have the timelines. So select data. Let's label this. Let's call it loan repayment. So it's always advisable to have these labels linked directly from the, sorry, let's remove this. I meant to edit what we have here, loan repayment. So every so often, it's advised that then the labels are also linked to the model, but for our case, we'll just have we'll just have code those labeling. But again, remember, when you're putting together your dashboard, just try as much as possible to have your labels also linked to the model. We are going to let's delete the. I want us to delete this key because we only have one item. That, and then I want us to label this loan repayment. Okay, so we have 30 minutes left in the call, and I want to spend at least 20 minutes of those 30 minutes to put together a dashboard. So we are going to go to our dashboard, and I hope we are together. Anyone who's been left behind? Anyone who's been left behind? Okay, we are good. All right. So we start with our key output. I want us to have a green, the Control-Shift-R green, to label the sections of our dashboard. And we want to label this section as valuation. Valuation, which is a key output. Something else I want us to do is I want us to center that label across the section, like so. And on valuation, what I want us to do is I want us to have on this side, I want us to have the key outputs. On the key outputs, I want us to group this into two types. We have the DCF valuation, or the DCF approach, let's call it that. And on the DCF approach, we have a few outputs from the valuations tab. So we're just going to come right to the valuations tab. We're going to pick the enterprise value, Control-C. Then we're going to come and link that here directly, Control-Shift-Q. Then we are going to paste the output to the left. Maybe let's move that there. Okay. Then we jump back and we get the equity value. Let's also have that there. Let's remove the bolding here. Then I also want us to have the price per share as well. Let's keep one line, then have the price per share at that point. We can narrow this out like so. Then at the bottom, then we're going to skip no, we can just have the comparable multiples approach there. I want us to bold that. Then I want us to jump back to our valuation tab. I want us to pick let's pick the 2022 numbers. Let's pick the equity value. Let's post that there. Then jump back and pick the price per share. Have that there. Or rather, let's skip a line. Have that there. Then let's narrow this column. Then what I want us to do is I want us to center also this title, center cross section. Center cross section, okay. And I want us to now put this as a table. So the first thing is we're going to put an outside border for the whole part. Then we'll put a bottom border for the header, for the main header, as well as the DCF approach bit, bottom border as well. Then from enterprise approach down to that point, I want us to add a right border, the same as here as well. Then for these two, for the other section, I want us to add a top and a bottom border so that part is also grouped on its own. Then we add a right border there and another right border there. Then I want us to use colors. We can label we can highlight this in, let's use the grays. So, sorry, let's use gray for that. Or no, let's stick to the green that we've started on. Maybe make that green. Then make this section a lighter version of the green, just to show that we are moving into other sections, a lighter version of that green. Then you can mark, you can change the color of these outputs. Okay, let's leave them in blue. Sorry. Let's leave them in blue. Okay, let's just change them to that black color. Okay, so there we have shown our key outputs. Another interesting thing to see is what are the key assumptions that have gone to produce our key outputs. We're going to have key assumptions over there. And on the key assumptions, we are still going to use the same approach. So for our DCF approach, our key assumptions included the weighted average cost of capital. What else went into being a key assumption for the DCF? We had the weighted average cost of capital. We had the valuation date. Let's also include the valuation date here. The valuation date. And let's see what other assumption is key that we need to show. Okay, we can do those two just for the example that we are doing. So then for this, we want to come to where the source of these inputs, which is the input C, on the weighted average cost of capital, we want to link that. Let's just skip them and do that there. Correct. Then we want to get the valuation date. There it goes. Okay. Then also, so we're going to skip another line, then have the comparable multiples approach. And for this, our key assumption is the EV EBITDA. Our EV EBITDA number, which from input C is this 7. So we put that here. We can add some 2 more decimal places and copy that like that. Same formatting that we did earlier. Have an outside box. Center this across the section. Center across the section. Then also we need to add a bottom border. A bottom border as well over here. We'll need to get the right there, and as well over there. Okay. Just to confirm across the room, I hope we are together. Any question? Does anyone have a question? Even as we continue? Okay. I'm hearing someone is unmuted. Is it a question? Anyone with a question? Okay. Okay. So there we have a chart on our key assumptions. So we have our key outputs and we have our key assumptions on valuation. I want to, again, we'll come back and clean up the dashboard and make it more easy to the eye. But I want us to add another section on revenues. I want us to label it revenues. And on this section, what we are going to do is we are going to get the graphs that we put up. If you remember from our paint structure, we said that we'll start the trend analysis, then move to the composition. So we come to our FinStat, go up to where we have the graph that we did on the trend analysis. We cut that, Control X, then Control V. And there we have our trend graph. So I just want to center this and just lift that a bit over there. Then the next one from our paint is the stacked, just to show the composition of the revenue. Come to our presentation, to our FinStat where we prepared the graph, just cut that and paste it somewhere at the center here. Try to align the graph so that there is some order in your dashboard. There, just take it down, then you can open this a bit more. Then have that at the center. Then the other graph that you want to show is the graph on the growth rates. Sorry, maybe this went too far to the right. Yeah. So we come to the ratios. You remember this graph that we made on the growth rates? Let's just cut that. We'll place it here for the as it is for the time being. If we are able to do this at the end of the call, we'll try and order it a bit more. But for now, let's just try it there. Maybe what we can do is try to expand it. The left, like so. Okay, so there we have our revenue graphs. Let's copy that section. You remember one of the things we said is we need to be able to have sections on our dashboard. The next thing that we have is the performance charts. And on the performance charts, if you remember from our paint, I know we've not been able to do all of them, but we've done the waterfall, and that's the one we are going to use as a placeholder for our section. And maybe what we can take as what we can take and do, and you can do it on your side, is to put together other charts or other graphs on on the performance. Have a chart of the margins, how the gross profit margin, the EBITDA margin, the net margin. Place that somewhere, have a chart on the gross profit, just being guided by the structure that we had put together here. Then the other part now is to move to the financial statement section. And this we want to call it pro forma financial statements. And the reason why we want to call them pro forma is because we want to make them as brief as possible. So the first thing is to get the timelines. We are going to pick, what we're just going to do is we're going to copy this, Control C, sorry. Then we're going to place that right there, Control Shift Q, then we're going to copy it across. I don't know where is the end of this one there. We can only, let's only have one post-focus period. Then we also take this as well, just to show which period we are in. Control Shift C. Let's also take the formatting. Let's take the formatting of that. There. Okay, nice. Then we start with the income statement. Let's give it that shade of green, Control Shift G. And we start, so we are only picking, we are trying to summarize it. So we are picking very high level items. So for example, we'll take the total revenues, that's what we have there. We are going to come and take the cost of sales. Then with that, we have the gross profit. Then we get the gross profit, and actually let's even replace the gross profit with the gross profit and other income. Then we take the total operating, just to see. Yes, we take the total operating expenses before depreciation. We include that there. Then we take EBITDA. We have our EBITDA there. Then depreciation and amortization. Then total earnings before interest and tax. Net finance cost as well. Then let's keep the one before income tax so that we have income tax. Then now we have net profit. Then with that said, I want to have an upper border for the gross profit, a top border, sorry. Then another top border for EBITDA as well. And to a border for earnings before interest and taxes. And then a top border for the net profit there. I'll try expand this kidogo, maybe wrap that. Then jump there. Then we also need the cost, which gives us the gross profit. Then we need the total operating expenses. So sorry, this is the gross profit that we need there. Then we need the total operating expenses. Total operating expenses, we need to get the EBITDA as well. Then depreciation. Total earnings before interest and tax. And if you realize what we are doing is we are just linking, we are linking the outputs on the dashboard to the entire, we are linking the output of the dashboard to their calculations in the income statement, so that if a user of the model is at the dashboard level and wants to understand where these revenues are from, they want to understand why the EBITDA in 2024 is 8 million, they can just jump and they are able to see how we have arrived at that EBITDA and be able to trace the formula back to the origin. So this is the P&L. Again, I'm seeing time is really tight on us. So what I'll do is for the financial statements, I'll just pause it there at the income, at the P&L. But in your version, please include the balance sheet and the cash flow statement as well. Then the other thing that we'll also need to include here is what we are calling the sensitivities. But before we get into the sensitivities, there's something that I'd like us to talk about. And we have some 10 minutes. I'd like to do this in about 5 minutes, just to allow us some extra 5 minutes just to speak on what sensitivity tables are and how to build them. We'll build one with you, then you'll take it as an assignment to build the other one. So an interactive dashboard is a dashboard that allows the user to manipulate outputs without having to go into the nitty-gritties of the model. And you don't allow them to manipulate all the outputs. You just provide an allowance for the key output items. For example, in our dashboard over here, our key output for the valuation is, say, the weighted average cost of capital. And what we want to do is we want to allow the user to change the weighted average cost of capital at this level. And how we are going to do this is, number one, let's make this a hard code, this 20. Then we are going to highlight it with that light yellow shade that indicates that this is an input. The same thing with the percentage. Let's just make that an hard code, and then highlight it with the input shade. Then what we're going to do is we're going to Control C, then link it to the input C sheet here, and you Control Shift Q, so that now instead of input C being an input in terms of the weighted average cost of capital, it is actually borrowing from the dashboard. And so consequently, if you change this at this level, it's going to be affected throughout the whole model. And you are able to see, and we can do an example to just confirm what we're saying. Say we say that then the weighted average cost of capital is 25%. You see the prices per shares have changed. Maybe just to go back, we were looking at a price per share of 542. But now you want to see what will it be at 25%. You're able to just change that immediately at that level, and the output changes, and you're able to see what's the result of that. You can do the same for the valuation date on this side for the EV EBITDA. Just those key assumptions that then you want some fungibility with. Then just the last thing that we're going to do is to put together a sensitivity table. And this we're going to do a sensitivity on the cost of capital, that is the weighted average cost of capital, against the price per share. And what the sensitivity table just allows you to see is it allows you to see what will be that price against different weighted average cost of capital numbers. So our current assumption has a weighted average cost of capital of 20%. So we decide, let's say, we decide that we are going to start, the column, so we are going to have our cost of capital on the column, this section over here. And then we'll be able to compare what the prices are at different levels. So let's start it off at 10%. And we are going to move it up by say 10.5. And I want Excel to continue doing this for me up until 17% there. Then we are going to move to the right and then move up one step. And here we are going to link the price per share. Well, we could put the formula there, but to make it easier, since we've already done the calculation, we're just going to link the output. That 452 is what we're going to have at the top there. So now what we want to do is, we want to be able to see at 10% what will be the price. What about at 11% weighted average cost of capital? What will be the indicative price? And so on and so forth. So what then we do is we highlight this section, all the data in there. Then we come to data, what if analysis, because again, the question is, what if the cost of capital was at 13%? Then we're going to select data table. Now, this is the interesting part, because now you have to choose what goes where. And the easiest way to identify what goes where is just to say that our inputs are on the column of this table. Our inputs are on the, like what we are sensitizing against, are on the column. And since we cannot choose anything on this table, we go back to the calculation to the point where that input, where the weighted average cost of capital is used, which is at the top here. Since we don't have it anywhere there, it's at the top here, and we just link that we just fill, so the column input cell, we link it to that part, and then we click OK. And what then Excel is able to do, it generates a list or what those price points would be. And just to make sure that we are correct, our model is working. I should have taken this a bit lower. Let's try get it to 20. Let's even get it to 21. And then redo this table so that we're able to confirm that our 20 number is represented. Data table, we said it's the column, and we are picking the 20% there. Okay, there we go. So now we have a sensitivity analysis that's checking what will be the price at different cost of capital points. And if you come to at a cost of capital of 20%, our price will be 452, and that's what we have here. But if our cost of capital was 10%, our price will be 647. And so this is what we call a sensitivity table. I'll mark, let's highlight this in blue, in some shade of blue. Let's do that. This we can highlight in some light green, just to show that it's outside of the table. Then we can use a more lighter blue for this, like that. I think that is better. And that's how we put together a simple sensitivity table. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So I'm going to pause there and just check around the room if we have any questions around putting together dashboards. Ezekiel, do you have any question?
I'm good.
Ezekiel, nice. Any question, Lillian, Anne? Any question?
Not at this point. I think my question will probably come when I try to do this on my own.
No problem. No problem. I'm seeing that there's a question on the chat. You have just said that the dashboard helps the user to manipulate the data without interfering with the outputs? Which one between the dashboard and the out borrows from each other? I thought dashboard summarizes the output to make it easy for the user to make a decision. Peter, if I understand your question is in regards to where we are saying that we are having an interactive dashboard where we are introducing inputs to the dashboard. Is that the basis of your question, Peter?
Yes.
So, generally, the dashboard should not have any inputs. The dashboard should be purely an output. Peter, if you just mute yourself. Okay, thank you, Peter. The dashboard should essentially be an output tab. But every so often, you find that there are some assumptions that we want to tweak very fast to see what will be the effect. For example, in our case here, say we are presenting this to a potential investor. The investor, you've shown them, and I'm just trying to convert this multiple into an input very quickly so that I can show you what I mean. Then we link the input C to this there. Okay. So assuming that you're presenting this to an investor, and when you're presenting it and you are trying to have conversation, they push back on your multiple. They say, well, the 7 EV to EBITDA is a bit aggressive. We've checked in the markets and we are seeing that the multiple is at 5.6. Instead of having to jump all the way to the input C and changing it, you want to make it easier for them to change that particular assumption. And that's why we were saying that we only allow the interactive dashboard to change key assumptions. And so you can change this to the 5.6 that they are claiming, and you are able to see that immediately take shape in the model and the outputs of the valuation change. Because if you remember, we had 399 and 452, but after we tried the 5.6, we're able to see a 391 and a 313. So is this to make the dashboard more interactive with the user without changing the structure of the entire model? And I'm going to insist on this, that we only allow that for key assumptions. And these assumptions should not go beyond 5 assumptions. The very key assumptions that then a user would like to play around with. I don't know if, Peter, your question is answered.
Yeah, it's clear. So it's on assumption.
Yes.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. Thank you very much, Peter. Seeing we are right at the top of the hour, if you could just allow me to take 3 more minutes of your time, then we'll be done. I'd like to highlight a few items on our dashboard. Number 1, our dashboard is not crowded. It has very clear, very precise information. There isn't so much happening on our dashboard. It's not complicated. It's easy to understand. You're able to see what each output is about. We've used very clear graphs that they are easy to read. No background colors. We've tried to use very subtle colors for our data, and these are things that then should be seen in your model. We've tried to remain with very professional colors. The reason why I'm more my muscle memory goes to the green is because Investia's corporate colors are green, and that's why in my model there is some significant green, at least to group the section. Again, that takes us to the other point where we are saying have your dashboard grouped into section, with each section highlighting specific items that are being highlighted in that section. Again, another very important thing is the flow of information. Once you just land on the dashboard, we have the key output on your face. That is the valuation and the price. And then we allow you to the side a chance to interact with it. then we flow to the revenues. We start by showing you what's the trend, what's the composition of the revenue. Then we close that off with what's the growth rate. Then we move to the performance of the business. If we had time, we would have the margins graph over here. We'll have maybe some liquidity graphs at this point and whatnot, just to tell a story. Then now we now close it off with a balance, the financial statements. And these financial statements are pretty summarized, just to give the output, the key outputs, total revenues. You don't have to take every single line item, just take the summaries. Then at the bottom, we have an allowance for sensitivities. I think with that, that covers our session on dashboards. As promised, we'll be sharing the presentation with you, because at the end of the presentation, we've done a brief do's and don'ts of dashboards. We've spoken on most, or if not all of them, throughout the call, but I'll share this. You'll be able to interact with them, you'll be able to see them. The other key bit is just to be able to flow and understand the types of charts and how to use them. At this point, I don't know if Lian is still on the call. I want to thank all of you for sticking to the very end of this session. I hope the session was helpful. I hope you were able to learn as much as possible. And before I maybe allow just one person, and I'll volunteer Ruth to maybe just give a comment on how they found the session. I'd like to remind you that feel free to complete the dashboard for your MAT case study or your selected case study, then share that with me. Lian will provide the avenues to share that. I'll spend some time to look at that. We can have a session and then I can provide feedback from that point. Ruth, very briefly in 1 minute, if you can just give any comments if you have any. If you don't, I'd like to hand the meeting back to Lian. Ruth, any comments? Okay, Lian, over to you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have yourself a good afternoon.
Okay, Simon, I think you said you're handing over the meeting to me.
Yes, Lian, just for you to close it.
Okay, so thank you everybody for taking the time to attend this session. I believe it's been worth your while. Just to note that this was the last facilitator session. We are in week 5. And so we expected that you'll be submitting your models on the 26th of April. So please remember that we have a Q&A this Friday. So we will, so if you have any questions, please do write to us beforehand so that we can make the Q&A session a bit more efficient. And also, the whole of next week, we will be checking up on you to ensure that to just see how far you are in terms of the model build. So please, if you are a bit behind, please do reach out to Kevin or Simon, and they will help you in catching up. So because we want everybody to complete this course and to successfully. So thank you so much for your time, and see you on Friday. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.